welcome. Sorry we're not able to offer that. But the good news is that class continues as we move forward into the next quarter. So, you'll have other chances. Just dry your tears. That's right, that's right. Well, let me share just a few million prayer requests. I'm going to leave this up here tonight because there'll be a lot of things you'll probably want to double check on. Again, as was announced Sunday, but I know a lot of folks weren't able to be here Sunday. Sympathy extended to the Force family. Freeman Force died recently. The funeral is going to be this Friday, so 2 days from now, Forest Hill East. Visitation begins at 1, service is at 2. So that's all going to, again, I'm going to leave this up here so you can check after class if you need to. All kinds of people on our prayer list. I'm just going to give some highlights of some new things before we pray. John Kleiss was able to have a nerve block that he needed today, and hoping to see if that is helpful to him moving forward. Bill Cooper has been in the hospital with mainly heart conditions. May have been able to go home this afternoon, have not heard at this point. Don Gamble, everything gets complicated, but they're still kind of circling the field in terms of trying to find out if he's going to be able to have the procedure that would help to fix an aortic stenosis that's been found for him. So right now, a test here, test there, here a test, there a test, everywhere a test, and hopefully they will be able to figure that out for him. Grady King was able, last week was moved briefly out of ICU, but it was determined that after about a day and a half or so that he needed to be moved back to ICU. So we'll continue to keep Grady in our prayers. Several folks here that are new or at least not able to be announced on Sunday. Scott and Jean Ann Robbins have a friend, Aaron Dean, who's got to have what's described as a complex surgery tomorrow. It involves a precancerous cyst on her pancreas. So, once you mess with the pancreas, that's not a lot of fun. So, going to be a tough, lengthy recovery for her. Also, their son-in-law is seeing a specialist. He has continued low platelet count and trying to figure out what's going on there, what that's all about. And that's obviously on top of the fact that, of course, Jean Ann's mom, Faye Porter, continues in hospice care. Tim and Kathy Overly are in Baltimore. His brother Paul had a ruptured brain aneurysm, and right now basically they are just, sounds like it basically hanging on to make sure everyone gets there to say their goodbyes, and there will not be a recovery in this case. So certainly want to remember Tim and his family. Let's see, Bill and Janine Wingett's great-granddaughter, less than a month old, will have surgery today or tomorrow for a pyloric stenosis that's blocking food from proceeding on as it should in the digestive process. So hopefully be able to address that. Let's see if there was anything else on here that was new. Julie Hardaway's sister, Mindy Zukowski, suffered a fall that required surgery for fractures in her leg and torn ligaments. So Julie is there with her. Those are kind of the new ones I've got, and we'll mention others as we pray. Anything else that needs to be mentioned on that? All right, well, let me pray for these folks, and then a couple of announcement type things to share, and then we'll move forward. Father God, we do ask that you would be with those folks we've mentioned, and others will add, perhaps just by name. I know many of us in here perhaps know of other people that we are concerned about and praying for, and we lift those people up to you as well. We do ask you to be with the Force family, and that their efforts to remember Freeman on Friday will be, that will be a positive thing for them. We understand that the funeral service is not the period at the end of the sentence. So ask that you would continue to be with that family as they move forward. Do ask you to be with John, and that the procedure today will in fact prove helpful for him as he tries to move forward, figuring out what they need to do with the cancer that he has. For Bill, pray that he does get strong enough to be able to go home, if not today, tomorrow. Ask you to be with the Robbins friend, Erin Dean, that her surgery will accomplish what it needs to for her. Pray for Don, that the tests that he's undergoing will reveal a clear pathway forward, and that his situation will be able to be addressed. We continue to lift up Grady and ask that you would bring healing into that situation, and that you would surround him and his family with a sense of your presence with him. For Scott and Jean Ann's son-in-law, pray that medical professionals can figure out what's going on with his low platelet count, and that can be something that is addressed. For those undergoing cancer treatment or in hospice care, like Cheryl Day's sister Cindy, like Bill McManus, like Jean Ann Robbins' mother, for Cindy Ray, for Zeke Rivers, just pray that you would be with those folks, and that you would bring about comfort and healing where possible. Father, we continue to pray for the Osborns, and that their daughter-in-law Eva may be found, and that there can be some, just that there can be a reuniting of that family, and continue to be with Brad and Suzanne as they travel and as they seek to be a positive presence in that situation. Be with Tim as he is with his brother, who is certainly from a human standpoint appears not going to recover, and pray that you would be with that family as they deal with that. Father, we ask that you would be with Pato's sisters in Ecuador, that you would bring about healing there from the things that they are facing, that you would be with Doug Stubbs' sister Lisa as she's undergoing cancer treatments. Good to know that Amy's mom is now in rehab, and pray that that will show a continuing improvement in her overall health. Be with the Wingett's great-granddaughter, that the surgery she needs to have will accomplish what it needs to for her, and be with them in their ongoing health issues. For Ashley Bale's mother, Beth Young, pray that as she recovers, that the things that are being done for her can help to speed that recovery forward. Pray that you would be with River, and that she would recover fully and quickly from her dislocated knee, and be with Julie as she's with her sister Mindy, that Mindy's recovery from a fractured leg will be quick and complete. Once again, Father, we thank you for the fact that you are concerned about the things that concern us. But we also pray for ourselves tonight that in some way we will learn just a little bit more tonight about what it is to be people who are committed by our words and our actions to represent you in this world, and help us to do that well. Through Christ we pray. Amen. All right, once again, I'll leave this up here. Let me just throw in some announcements here. 2023 contributions statements will be emailed on Friday the 26th. That is this Friday. If you need a hard copy printed or mailed, please sign the list in the foyer or contact the office. On Saturday, it says, OC family, you are invited to Discovery Park of America in Union City. Kids admission is free this month, so we all get in free. This is so cool. But it says, join us whether you have kids or not. If you have never been, it's worth the drive. There are many neat exhibits inside and outside, and if you'd like to meet the Mahundros, David here, and a few others there on the 27th. You can contact Kara by Friday. So that's Discovery Park of America. David, give us the 5-second. What makes that? What should our socks roll up and down just hearing of the possibility of?
3 floors of excitement and learning and fun.
All right, excitement, learning, and fun. ELF. So I mean, that is just ELF. That is good stuff. So anyway, if you need more information, you've got that. Monday is the picking up of the stuff for the Paragould Children's Home, list of requested items here. So that's Monday that needs to be picked up. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, unless you plan to make a trip here between now and Sunday is your best bet for bringing stuff by for that. And then finally, a few dates have been added to the meal schedule for Wes and Fran. If you can help, please visit takethemameal.com. And the name is Carver, and the password is OCTLC. And once again, lots of information. I'm going to leave this up here. Check it out post-class if you need to. All right, well, that's all the time we have for tonight. And sorry. Once again, for those of you who were not able, came expecting there to be the singing class tonight, sorry about that being canceled. I would lead us in a song, but it would be a moving experience. I would probably have to move after attempting to do that. If you didn't get a chance to pick up one of the sheets in the back, I would encourage you to do that. On the little table there, because you don't know the players without the roster. So, talking about happy holidays, which sounds anachronistic now, but the idea of here we are thinking about the fact that God baked into, or we started at least with the idea that God baked into Israel's schedule days off, holidays, holy days, and that's where the word actually really comes from, kind of baked into their schedule that there was going to be time when they are going to be able to remember who God is, remember what He's done for them, intentionally think about events that shaped them as people, time for rest, time to build on relationships. So I'm almost sensing, for the most part, an alliteration there, almost a sermon coming on rest, remembrance, relationship. But that's what's going on with all of these holidays, these festivals that were built into Israel's calendar. Would like to drill down a bit tonight on one of these ideas. The one that seems to be almost foundational because it's the one, number one, that occurs the most often, and number two is the one that, when there is a list like there is in Leviticus 23, almost always comes first in the list of holy days, holidays for Israel. Anybody want to take a guess? Sabbath, which you probably saw ahead on the sheet, which is fine. Anyway, Sabbath, exactly right. The Sabbath is sort of the foundational one of these holy days, holidays. Once a week, Israel was to take a day off, a day for rest, a day for, as it developed, a day for worship, a day to be with others, a day to work on relationship with God, relationship with others. This was the foundational holy day, once a week. That was radical. Why was that radical in the ancient Near East? Why would that have been a radical concept that you can take a day off? Typically, if you didn't work, you didn't eat. Okay, so you got some of that going on there. And yet, to take a day off, what would that show? Trust. Yeah, I trust that God can take care. The world will, and this is going to be, I don't mean to be a shocking sort of thing here, but the world may continue running even if you are not at your job. I knew it would shock some people, But you know, we sort of live our lives as if the world is utterly dependent on me being lashed to the mast to continue doing whatever it is that I need to do. There may be people in positions like that. You know, I get that. God bless you. Okay. But it's interesting to me that God says part of what it means to be a human is that there is a rhythm in your life that involves rest, that involves attention to relationship, both vertical and horizontal, that involves you recognizing that A, I can trust God, and B, I can trust God to run the world. I don't have to. Well, that's sort of an interesting idea. That's the idea behind the Sabbath. So 30 seconds with a conversation partner, this idea of Sabbath, which, you know, I'm not just thinking the seventh day of the week here, but just the idea of Sabbath, the idea that we can back off of being human doings and be human beings at least once a week. Is that a good idea or not? Does that still work? Is that even feasible in the days of, how many people in here have cell phones? I mean, I'm not asking you to, yeah, let's put them all on the table in the back so we won't be distracted. No. But we had to do that with our students, you know. I mean, because otherwise they're just like, you know, yeah, I heard everything you said, you know. In a day when, because of that, we are available 24/7, 366. Is the idea of Sabbath even feasible? Take about 30 seconds with a conversation partner and just kind of come up with a thought or two on that. Is it even feasible? Does it still work? Is that a good idea? I'll watch the clock. You talk to each other. Got 10 more seconds. All right, let's see if we can pull it back together, and if we can't, it won't surprise me. What do you think? Is that even is that a feasible idea even in today's world? The idea of a Sabbath, of a time when everything shuts down and we are focused on rest, relationship, remembrance of God? Is it even feasible? Possible. Unpack that answer.
Feasible is a neat word because can I do that? Well, I should do that. I really feel like with my work that I do, knowing that I can get a phone call from the doctor of St. Jude or a patient of St. Jude at literally any time, I have to have time to disconnect. So it's almost like a requirement. I just have to find it. So feasible, it's not easy, but yet I do feel like that's something that I have to work on, I have to do. I think that's a good thing to be able to disconnect, to be able to rest, tie it into this, just be able to trust in God that, okay, I don't have to be on 24/7.
All right.
I can afford to do that.
You touch on an important point there. How many of you feel like, those of you who are still working and those of you who aren't still working, anyway, but I'm so jealous. In a world when you can define yourself, I'm wanting to define myself as a rich retired person, and just like, but not going to happen. This notion of how often do you feel like you're on all the time? That there is not a time when you can truly be off. And I'm not even talking about mothers of small children, but just, with our work, you kind of feel like there could be the call anytime. There's the expectation that the phone rings, you are available. The text comes in, you are available. I don't know, is that pressure? I mean, maybe we get used to it, but does that sort of start to feel like, I don't have any say? And maybe even, God's not really in control of my life. The God, small g, who writes my annual report, is in charge of my life. Someone else. Is it even feasible? Is it possible? Is it, what do you do with that, Cody?
Something I ask myself sometimes, like an all-powerful God, omniscient, omnipresent, did he have to take a day of rest, or was that for us? So if we are to emulate him, and obviously we're not omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, but could we do that? If he could do it, for sake of ourselves, and for sake of our families, and for sake of our own cognition.
Yeah. Because there is that, definitely, when you get the Sabbath commandment in Exodus 20, it's tied to that idea that, even God does this. God did this. It's kind of an interesting thought. But hey, if God could just rest, could just be, did he create us to have moments where we just are and not have to be doing?
I don't know what that's like. I mean, like, maybe when I was a kid, I just stared off into the sunset and, this was, and then have a thought in my brain.
All right.
And just pondered deeper things and all that kind of stuff. But modern day, borderline adult to beyond,
Right.
there's always something on the docket.
And then you have children. And then, yeah. Anybody in here not feel like life is full of stuff to do? I mean, even if my dad said he had to go back to work after he retired so that he could, not be as busy, so, there's just our lives are just busy. And it's hard to slow down. And for most of us, what do we feel when we do slow down? Guilty. Exactly. There are studies out there that show that people feel like when they're not doing something, or, how can I put this? Either they're not doing something or they know they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they've got something to do, they're just not doing it, that they feel guilty. That's just the way we've become wired. So is it even feasible to talk about Sabbath? To talk about a time of just, to the best of my ability, I just want to be for a little bit. I don't want to be having to do something. I heard someone recently talk about, and I thought, wow, that's kind of the irony. This is someone who is in I would describe it as a teaching type profession. It says, I have to work really, really hard to make sure that I have a couple of hours a week to actually do some reading in my field. And I'm thinking, well, I thought that was part of your job, was to keep up with stuff, but there's so much other stuff I have to work really hard to see that so that actually part of what I'm supposed to be doing, I have to almost like treat it like, I get a couple of hours to read now. It's like like an amazing sort of moment. It's just tough. Life's tough right now, right? That's a good question.
You know, when I was growing up, nothing was open on Sunday.
Right.
There was no such thing as travel ball. There was no such thing as people doing anything on Sundays. You had dinner, you went home, you took a nap, you played outside, you know, you did whatever. And I was just thinking about this, is that now there is no break of the day for anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 Mm.
Anybody my age remembers that you didn't do anything on Sunday. You went to church, you came home, you
Yeah.
played or whatever, but you didn't have anything going on Sunday.
And even those who didn't go to church, there was not much going on Sundays. So you're right. Right.
And there were no ball games on Sundays, and there were no people going out of town to do whatever on. We just didn't do that.
Yeah.
And the more stuff we have, but the more stuff we have, the more things we can be busy doing. So I think if we want to have Sabbath, we can. Give up the phone. And we have to give up some of these things. And I'm guilty. I'm not.
I was gonna say, Amy, you're meddling now. You're meddling. Yeah. Yeah.
Because heaven forbid we miss a text. I mean, my mom and dad let me leave the house and didn't hear from me for hours. You know what? I don't think they were worried about that. They're happy. I'm sure they're like, bye. But now we think we have to know everything, every minute of every
Yeah.
day. We get alerts to everything, so we do it to ourselves.
It's not just it's not just Gen Y. It's everybody is got that FOMO, fear of missing out. We've let ourselves be trained. Anybody in here have kids under what, 17? You got kids under 17? Your kids will never know a world without the constant presence of being electronically available. I mean, whether you've gotten them a phone yet or not, is their friends have the phones already. I mean, they are aware. They grow up in a world where the assumption is you are available 24/7. You need to be on 24/7, and you're going to miss out on something. I was amazed at the kids who would tell me, "Oh yeah, I was up until 3 o'clock, doing blah 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 blah," and you're just going, God love you. We still meet at 7:30 is when we start, whether you're up till 3 or not.
On the flip side, Kim and I were talking that it's not so much fear of missing out, it's that you shut off for X amount of time and you come back and you are overloaded beyond what you're capable of dealing with. And how do you mitigate that? Just even the thought of doing, I come back and I've got 100 emails and 50 texts and somebody's been trying to frantically reach me for the last 3 hours.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Right.
Going into it? How do we rewire our brain?
Because even if you unplug, the rest of the world hasn't.
It's like my sister calls me and I don't pick up the phone. Within 30 seconds, Keith's phone is ringing.
Our priorities have changed through generations and decades. But we don't prioritize family the way that generations did back in the day. We don't prioritize just family time without. I mean, some families do and have dinner every night and play games and stuff. But the majority of families in our country, they don't eat dinner together, and we don't. I mean, the priority becomes how do we look to other people as opposed to how are we raising our families to be how we want our families to be. And we don't have the priority of being able to say, I'm going to turn the phone off and I'm not going to answer it, or I'm going to say no to some investment in. We don't say no, we're a generation that doesn't say no.
And then you get this whole thing of we're convinced that there's, we can't say no. We gotta be on. And so then you think back to, we said it at the beginning, in the ancient Near East, where life was slower and more wonderful, and we all, Sabbath was spoken into a culture where the thought was, if I don't work today, my family starves. And yet God said, trust me, you can take a day. Trust me, you can do this. And I am certainly not saying that, their lives were, so much simpler and more wonderful. And I do think there's something to, our lives have accelerated to such a point. I don't know how much longer it's sustainable. I really don't. I think about that sometimes, and then I use my phone to look up articles on it. But it's just, you think about that idea. How is this sustainable? The pace that we are going at, and the assumption that this is what life is all about, and into the assumption of the ancient Near East, God says, take a day. Take a day for yourself, for your relationship with, go back to, we don't take time for our families. What are families? Those are our primary relationships. God says, take a day. I'm going to give you a day, so that every 7 days you've got built into the rhythm of your life, you're taking some time to not have to be a human doing. It's interesting. Do you think, ask this question, do you think Jesus was busy? Do you think he had stuff to do? I was going to have you talk, 15, 20 seconds amongst yourselves, but, do you think Jesus was busy? He had things to do. He had a sense of, I think you see that particularly as you move into, his journey to Jerusalem. He knows his time is limited. And there's a sense that I've got some things I need to make sure I get done. There's some things I need to be saying to these folks who are going to continue on my mission. But it's fascinating. Jesus already had built into his life, and this should be on your sheet, this idea of Sabbath. I want to illustrate that in a couple of ways. First of all, go back to Luke 4, where Jesus goes into the synagogue on the Sabbath. And according to Luke 4:16, Jesus goes to the synagogue as was his custom. This was something he was used to. We've said this before, I'll say it again. If anybody could have taken a pass on going to the synagogue, it would have been Jesus. He could have taken a pass, but he did not. That was part of the rhythm of his life, is that he was involved in that. But he's also involved in not just the day of Sabbath. And by the way, didn't he get in trouble on the Sabbath a lot? Because he was actually doing things that had to do with restoring relationships. Interesting. I think you could make the argument that about every time Jesus got in trouble for doing something on the Sabbath, it was because he was serving the purpose of what the Sabbath was in the first place, restoring relationship. But that's a story for another time. But this idea of Sabbath, you've got, I think I put the texts on your sheet there, but you see places where, like Matthew 14, verse 13 says, now when Jesus heard this, and what he had just heard is that John the Baptizer had been killed. When he heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. Now, I'm just telling you, verse 14, which, I don't have down there, but verse 14 is one of the most amazing verses in all of the Gospels, because it says Jesus saw the crowds, and the way I want to fill it in is that, and he pulled out his AK-47 and he said, not today, bozos, not today. This is not the time or place, stay away. But instead, he serves them. You know, he sees the crowd, he has compassion on them, he teaches them, then he feeds them, because what follows is the story of the feeding of the 5,000. And then you get to verse 23. It says, "And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray." Was that where he was going in the first place? Yeah. After he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. And by the way, that's Matthew's version of the feeding of the 5,000. John 6's version of that actually has in verse 15 that Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king. But he withdrew again to the mountains by himself. You know, he exercises this Sabbath moment. Clearly, by the way, if they were coming to make Jesus king, clearly Jesus, bless his heart, he needed to consult with somebody who knew what was going on. He did not know how to succeed. You know, here's people ready to vote you in as king, or at least go to the closet where they keep the torches and pitchforks, and they were going to go there and, you know, we were going to make you king. And Jesus is like, nope, not for me. In fact, I'm going to go take a little Sabbath here. A time for him to reconnect, to refocus with the Father, to kind of just recenter himself would be a phrase I would use. You've got places such as Luke 9:18. Once when Jesus was praying alone with only the disciples near him, he asked them, "Who do the crowd say that I am?" You know, that idea of once when Jesus was, it's kind of got the force of this is not something that just happened one time, but the idea is this is something that was sort of a regular practice of Jesus. He's off praying alone. You got Luke 6:12-13, big decision coming. Now during those days he went out to the mountain to pray. He spent the night in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples and chose 12 of them, whom he also named apostles. You know, what does he do when he's got a very important decision to make? He takes Sabbath time, maybe little s, not capital S, but he takes Sabbath time. I'm going to recenter myself. I'm going to make sure I'm focused here. Luke 9:28, about 8 days after these sayings, by the way, these sayings are when, you know, the apostles, Jesus said, "Who do people say that I am? And who do you say that I am?" And Peter says, You're the Christ. We got you figured out. You're the Christ." And Jesus says, "Okay, that's fine. Keep that to yourself because you clearly have no idea what that means. So let me tell you what it means. It means I'm going to go to Jerusalem and I'm going to die." And they're just like, that's not what happens to messiahs. Once again, Jesus does not know how to succeed, bless his heart. You know. So Jesus, you know, again, and I've always found it fascinating that, you know, when Peter says that, particularly in Mark's version, very blunt. What does he say to Peter when Peter says, no, you got it wrong. Messiahs don't die. He says, "Get behind me, Satan." Because you're not looking at this the way you need to look at it. And you know, how did Jesus have the ability to do that, to stay that focused? I'm wondering if it's because before he asked them that question even, he's off praying alone. He's been on Sabbath. He's recentered himself. Anyway, 8 days after these sayings, now to Luke 9:28, excuse me, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and went up on the mountain to pray. This is going to be where you have the transfiguration, but he's going up there to pray. Here's the important part for our purposes. Jesus didn't show up just every seventh day at the synagogue for Sabbath. Jesus had a habit of practicing Sabbath in the sense that he intentionally carved out time for God in his life. He intentionally carved out time in his life for those relationships. He intentionally carved out time in his life for the things that were of ultimate importance to him. And that captures the idea of Sabbath. If we wait around for there to be time for us to rest, remember God, remember, you know, what he's done for us and our relationship with him, to work on that relationship and our relationships with others, if we wait around for that time to happen, it will not happen. If nothing else, your texts and your phone calls will fill up that time. That's just reality, right? I mean, we were talking about that earlier. So what we see Jesus doing in what was a busy life was he did not let the busyness take over. Even in the situation where the crowd came and interrupted his desire to go off and have a little Sabbath, he addressed the needs of the crowd. He took care of them, fabulously so, but then he went and had a Sabbath. You know, that was still of critical importance to him. Yeah, Kim?
Question going back a little bit. Did we have commanded Sabbath before the Ten Commandments?
You know, that's interesting. It is implied in the Genesis account. But I don't think there was a bit of Torah that says take a Sabbath before the Ten Commandments. And remember what that group to which that was initially announced in Exodus 20, they had just come out of a situation of slavery. So because they had cell phones, they were at the beck and call of their masters all the time. You know, so we're kind of used to that idea.
Well, that's why I was just thinking maybe commanded Sabbath was created, because Jesus said it was created for man, not man for Sabbath. Maybe it was created to make man learn to trust God again.
I think that could be entirely what's going on. I think it's definitely all about, you know, this notion of do you trust me enough that you'll take a day off? And when the time came when they were to go back to the Exodus story, when they are to collect the manna, how many of them, you know, want to not trust God and get more than they are supposed to? Apparently a bunch of them. So this notion of do you trust God is at the heart of this. Do we trust that the world will go on and will be okay if we still find ways of carving out time, being intentional about time for working on our relationship with God and our relationship with other people? Does it come with the, okay, we're gonna eat together? We found when our boys were teenagers that was not sustainable. I'm just going to say it. It just was not sustainable because of Michelle's schedules, because of elders meetings, because of, you know, I'm just throwing that out, because of, you know, all of their sports activities and, you know, trying to keep them all in the same sports at the same time was, you know, didn't work. But there were days that we said, this has to be this day, you know, we're all going to be here. You know, this is going to be just a time that we can do that. You know, there's got to be some intentionality. It will not just happen. It will not just happen. And yet I think many of us who call ourselves Christ followers are just hoping that, you know, just around the corner, just around the corner, just around the corner, just around the corner, it's going to, you know, I'll have more time. No. This world is constructed to suck up whatever free time you have. You know, that's just part of the reality. Yeah, Dave?
Yeah, so thinking about that command to these Israelites is that remember the Sabbath, holy.
Mm-hmm. Set it apart.
Not just, this is a good idea, not just, this is something I modeled for you, so you might want to think about doing it, but that gives those Israelites the idea of how they are to see this up. It is set apart. You don't mess with that. And while we're not commanded to have that Sabbath today, I think that idea or is it, well, I'll get to it, I'll get around to it? Or is it something that, like Jesus modeled, is intentional as part of that?
Yeah.
How much of a priority has that been in life?
I want to say one more thing, and then I want to come back to that, because that's, I think you're pointing us in an important direction. But before that, I dare not move on without calling on Maggie. Because she had her hand up, and one night I went on like nothing. And, you know, I just, I learned my lesson. I just, you know, it's like, call on me when my hand's up. No.
The problem is, are we going to be relevant in the world when we do something different than what the world is doing? And I mean, the world is always going to be there, and it will spit you up and chew you out and all that stuff for whatever. But you step back and let the world go by without you being a part of it and do something different that matters more. You get left behind, you're not relevant anymore.
And that is a risk, isn't it? I mean, I think that articulates the risk we feel, right? Is that this could make me irrelevant? Do I trust God that I can actually, if I do this, if I put the big chunks in the container first, that I will actually maybe perhaps be more relevant to His purposes in the world? And that's a tough one. But yeah, you're right. That's well articulated, Maggie. I'm so glad I called on you. Thank you. I am so glad I called on you. I'm glad you raised your hand. Here's the thing, just briefly, let me connect a couple of more dots here. And I think I worded it on the sheet. I can't remember how I worded it on your all sheets, but on mine, I looked back later and I thought, that must have been just right off the top of my head. You know, can we also attach some of this magic to being together with other Christ followers? And I don't mean it magic in some sort of a ooh sense, but I mean this idea that if we trust God with chunks of time, will something better come out of that than by not trusting God with that time? And does that extend to our things like our assemblies that we talked about as rituals, you know, things that we do with some regularity because they serve a higher purpose, our assemblies, our times of Bible study, maybe small groups or whatever? Does that function in the same way? Can those things, in a sense, be Sabbath, in the sense that we're setting aside that time to work on those relationships, vertical and horizontal, in such a way that we are being countercultural? I mean, look around the room, people. We're being countercultural. And that's where I want to take the next step here, where if up until now you're thinking, oh great, so Greg, what you're telling me is that that I'm not living up to where I should be if I'm not chunking out time to do this. I'm preaching to the choir right now. You've chunked out time to be here tonight. I don't think there's anybody in here, you know, with the exception of, you know, preacher types, that's not so busy, you know, because we only work one day a week. That's not, you know, you've got stuff to do. You've got places to be. Maybe you're here because of your kids. That's great, that's fine, but you have chunked out that time. Okay? So what I want us to do is go back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago before we were so rudely interrupted by the snow and ice. But this idea that it's not so much the ritual and that you check the box, that you're doing it with intent. That this is something intentional. You know, I'm showing up to Bible class or to small group or to our assemblies on Sunday mornings, I'm showing up to those things not because I want to check a box, not because I'm hoping to get on God's good side, but can I see that and use that as a moment of Sabbath, as a moment of recentering who I am, as a moment of, I just want to, in this moment, recognize that by God's mercies and by God's grace, I'm a human being, not a human doing. I'm not defined by my job. I'm not defined by my role. I'm defined by this relationship with God, which puts me in these other relationships. So I know this is one of those things where the preacher gives and takes away. But, you know, what I'm wanting to, I wanted to take away first this time and kind of make us feel like, oh, he really thinks we don't spend enough time with God. Great. I'm feeling so good about my investment of time tonight. No. I want to say, look, I think what you're doing just by being here on a Wednesday night, a rainy Wednesday night, is important. And I think it is an act of Sabbath. And this gets back to the countercultural thing. Any act of Sabbath, Walter Brueggemann has said, is an act of resistance. Resistance to the way the world says things are and the way the world says things operate. It is an act of resistance that you show up tonight to say, you know what? There are a lot of other things I could be doing, but I have chosen to set aside some time, even if I didn't really feel like it. I have chosen to set aside some time to be intentional about working on my relationship with God and God's people. That's an act of resistance. Showing up on Sunday morning is an act of resistance. You know, we like to talk about, all this stuff. You know, if we just shut everything down on Sunday, people would stay home. Do you know, even when there were blue laws, do you know what the average Sunday morning attendance was? I mean, of adults in the United States, according to the people who study such things, somewhere in the, on any given weekend, 18% of Americans are attending some sort of house of worship sometime during the weekend. And that includes our Jewish and Muslim friends too, okay? So about 16% are going to attend some sort of a Christ-informed worship time. Do you know what it is now? About 16%, So here's the thing, what you are doing is we're going to order our lives a different way. We choose to because of this relationship we have with God. And I'm just telling you, what I want you to hear as you walk away is not, oh my goodness, I don't have the kind of quiet time I should have. I'm not going to tell you what kind of quiet time to have. What works for some people doesn't work for others. What I am going to tell you is, please recognize you are a Sabbath person just by being here tonight. God bless you for that. And by the way, I think He does. My goal is to cough into the microphone as often as possible. It's interesting that, I'm not talking about folks who maybe can't physically be part of our gatherings, but the fact that you chunk out time to be a part of it, I think is really significant. And I hope you hear that. I think I have a phrase on your sheet. I come away stronger. Did I put that on the sheet? Sorry. That's actually the name of a book that Robert Wuthnow, who's a sociologist of religion, and there's something you always want to grow up to be, a sociologist of religion at Princeton, but he studies some of these things, and it was trying to find out what it is about like attending church services, being parts of small groups and Bible classes and things like that. Why would someone do that? And the thing that he kept coming back to in the things people would say in the interviews was just I come away stronger. Being a part of it lets me know my life is bigger than just what I'm involved in. It lets me know that my life is part of something bigger than just my job title. And I come away stronger. And I think that's significant. You are part of something that's bigger than your job title. Next week we'll pick up, I haven't heard a bell or anything, but according to my Mickey Mouse, we're getting kind of a little close to 7:30. But next week what I hope what we will do as we kind of finish this up is just talk about the way we can incorporate some of these rituals in our lives and hopefully see how we already have. We just kind of don't notice it. But being a part of these things are things that shape us. And ultimately, I think, give us strength to move in God's direction. So, one last piece of advice. This is from a friend of mine who was actually passing on a piece of advice that he was given. In our busy world, if you really want to unplug, he was told when he goes on vacation, he was like a nursing home rehab facility director. So he was truly on 24/7. I mean, just all the time. And so one of the guys that had been in the business a little longer said, John, let me tell you something. Before you plan your next vacation, you get a map of the U.S. that shows the coverage for your cell phone provider. And where it is black, that's where you want to find a vacation spot, where you have no coverage, because otherwise they will find you and you will not be on vacation the whole time. You need to be where they can't reach you. There are times when we need to unplug completely. But I think Jesus shows us, hey, if you got a Sabbath mindset, that, you know what, I'm just got a big decision coming up, I need to make sure I blocked off some time, to just recenter myself. I got some difficult, I know I'm going to be under a lot of pressure. I need to spend some time blocked off, recentering myself. Martin Luther was supposedly wrote in his journal one time, very busy day ahead, need to spend twice as much time in prayer this morning. And I just think that's an interesting insight there. All right, you guys, just if you'd promise not to run in the halls, I'll go ahead and let you go. And wow, there's the second bell. Right after the first bell. Enjoy the rest of your evening.